I was sitting in this sleek espresso bar in Berlin Mitte, just a stone's throw from the Chancellery, across from a guy who writes speeches for the political elite. He was leaning in, eyes wide with a frantic caffeine-fueled energy, showing me a draft on his laptop. It was a breakthrough proposal on migration and digital reform, sharp, decisive, and actually took a stand. He looked genuinely proud, whispering, "This is it. Finally, we're going to lead." He seemed convinced that this single document would break the years of deadlock. But then his phone buzzed. It was a message from the coalition compatibility check. I watched his face instantly drain of that excitement. He slumped back, scrolling through a mountain of redlined comments from 3 different parties, 2 legal departments and a regional association. By the time he was done, that bold speech had been sanded down into a smooth, wordless pebble, a series of vague promises designed to ensure that absolutely no one could be offended. He didn't even look angry, he just looked resigned. "We have to keep the peace," he muttered, "even if it means staying exactly where we are." That shift, from the spark of a real idea to the hollow safety of a press release, is the heartbeat of German politics today. It's why we see figures like Olaf Scholz or Friedrich Merz promise clarity and delivery, only to be immediately swallowed by a machine designed to prevent anything from actually happening. We've created a system where everyone has a seat at the table, but no one is allowed to touch the steering wheel. It's like watching a CEO who can't buy a stapler without a board meeting, a legal review, and a LinkedIn poll. After 1945, we were so terrified of power that we built the world's most sophisticated set of brakes. The problem is, we become so obsessed with the brakes that we've forgotten how to drive. And now, as the world demands a turn, the system is simply shrugging its shoulders.
That image, the smooth, wordless pebble, it's really quite haunting, isn't it?
It is. It felt like watching something die right there on the screen.
Because it's not just, a poetic complaint about a tough day at the office. It's the perfect physical artifact of what political scientists have been talking about for decades. They call it the joint decision trap.
A trap.
Exactly. That speechwriter, he wasn't the victim of a bad boss or a chaotic news cycle or anything like that. He was, in a very real sense, the victim of a constitutional architecture, a system that was deliberately designed to do one thing really, really well. To grind sharp, decisive ideas down into pebbles.
Let's not let the speechwriter or the whole political class off the hook that easily. I mean, every job has red tape. Every government in the world has bureaucracy. Is it really a trap, or is that just a convenient excuse for people who aren't very good at navigating the system? We're talking about Germany, after all. The land of efficiency, of engineering, the Autobahn. The whole idea that the government is physically incapable of making a decision. It just seems like a bit of a stretch.
It feels like a stretch because I think we confuse 2 very different things. Administrative efficiency and political efficacy.
What's the difference?
Administrative efficiency is the ability to process a form correctly, to stamp a passport, to make the trains run. Political efficacy is the ability to change direction, to decide you need a whole new kind of railway system, and then actually build it.
Right. So Germany is great at maintaining the existing machine, but terrible at designing a new one.
You mentioned the Autobahn, and that's a perfect example of the past. But just try building a new Autobahn today.
Yeah.
Or even better, try passing a truly comprehensive digital reform law, something that actually changes things.
You'd run into this trap.
You'd run headfirst into what Fritz W. Sharp identified years and years ago. This isn't about red tape or bloated bureaucracy in the way we usually think about it. It's about the fundamental wiring of the Federal Republic. We aren't looking at incompetence here. What we're looking at is a machine that is working exactly as it was designed to work.
Designed to fail.
Oh, right. It was designed to prevent any single entity, any single leader or party from moving too fast or accumulating too much power.
So this is a post-1945 thing.
Yeah.
A reaction to the past.
It's entirely a post-1945 thing. The primary overwhelming fear was centralized power. The solution they came up with was federalism. But, and this is the crucial part, German federalism is very unique. In the United States, for example, the states have their powers and the federal government has its powers. They're mostly separate.
And in German?
In Germany, the powers are interlocked. They're woven together. And Sharp calls this entanglement the joint decision trap.
So you have this idea, this bold speech. How does the trap actually snap shut on it?
It snaps shut in a place called the Bundesrat, the Federal Council.
Right, the upper house of parliament where the states represent.
Exactly. This is where the 16 states, the lender, have their say. It's not just a debating chamber or a rubber stamp. A huge percentage of all federal laws, basically anything that affects state finances or their administrative duties, requires the explicit consent of the Bundesrat.
Okay.
The state governments are often, in fact usually, run by different political coalitions than the federal government in Berlin.
Right. If the chancellor in Berlin is from, say, the Social Democrats, the SPD,
Yes.
but the big, powerful states like Bavaria and North Rhine-Westphalia are run by their rivals, the conservatives, the CDU, they can just block him flat out.
Yeah, but it's actually worse than simple blocking. A simple veto would almost be cleaner.
How can it be worse than that?
Because it forces a negotiation before the law is even written. This is where your speechwriter's brilliant idea died. He wrote a sharp, decisive draft. But the people in the chancellery, they're not naive. They know that to get that law through the Bundesrat 6 months from now, they need to appease the opposition that's running Bavaria today.
So they water it down from the very beginning.
We pre-compromise. They dilute the reform, they sand off the sharp edges, they pull the teeth from it until it's just a set of gums, all to make it acceptable to everyone.
Which means, in the end, it really changes nothing. It just preserves the status quo.
Sharp argues, and I think he's absolutely right, that this system forces every single policy to the lowest common denominator. Imagine you have 16 people trying to order a pizza.
Okay.
5 want pepperoni, 5 are vegan, 3 are allergic to gluten, and the last 3 are on a strict budget. Now, in a normal system, maybe the majority wins. The pepperoni eaters get their pizza.
And the others get a salad.
Right. But in the joint decision trap, everyone has a veto. The vegans can veto the pepperoni, the gluten-free people can veto the standard crust, the budget watchers can veto the fancy toppings. So what do you end up with?
A glass of water, a bowl of ice cubes.
Or that smooth, wordless pebble. You end up with a policy that offends no one, but also feeds no one. It serves no purpose. If you look at the SGA Germany report, they explicitly highlight the role of the Bundesrat as a massive institutionalized veto player.
And they had a term for this, don't they? I've heard it before.
Reform style.
A reform traffic jam.
It's not that the cars in the traffic jam are broken or the drivers are bad. It's that the exit ramp has been physically bricked over by the constitutional requirement for consensus. And the driver, the chancellor, has no legal way to knock down that wall.
So the mechanics of it are clear. It's deadlocked by design. But you said something earlier that I want to come back to. You said, this isn't just about laws not getting passed. It does something to the psychology of the country. You used a term from the outline, anomie. Serious, almost like a disease.
It is a disease, in a way, but a disease of the social body, not the physical one. And to understand this, we need to pivot a little bit. We need to move from the hard political mechanics of Sharp to the sociology of people like Jonathan Heaney and, going further back, Émile Durkheim.
Durkheim, the classic French sociologist.
Right. Because when a government acts like a pebble-making machine for long enough, for decades, it starts to have a profound effect on the psychology of the people living under it.
And anomie is a Durkheim concept, isn't it? It means something like normlessness. A breakdown of standards.
Yes, that's the textbook definition. But let's make it more concrete. Durkheim had a very specific view of the state. He argued that the state isn't just a service provider. It's not just the DMV or the tax office or the police.
What is it then?
The state is the organ of social thought. It's the brain of the society. Its most important function is to look at the terrifying chaos of the world economic shifts, pandemics, wars, migration, and to process that chaos into a coherent direction.
It tells the society a story about itself.
It tells the society, this is what is happening, this is what it means, and this is what we are going to do about it.
It's like the captain on the bridge of a ship in a storm. Even if the waves are huge, if the captain is on the loudspeaker saying, the storm is bad, but we are holding our course and heading 20 degrees north, the crew feels a sense of purpose. They stay calm.
That is a perfect analogy. The captain provides what some sociologists call symbolic credit. It's the belief that someone is at the wheel, that there is a plan. Now, what happens when that joint decision trap paralyzes the captain?
Yes.
The crew looks up at the bridge, and what do they see? They see the captain arguing with the first mate. They hear that the engine room is vetoing the steering commands from the bridge. And the ship's loudspeaker isn't giving orders. It's just playing bland, inoffensive elevator music to, as your speechwriter said, keep the peace.
The crew panics. They lose faith.
That is anomie. It's the breakdown of social regulation and shared purpose. The public loses faith not just in a specific politician or a specific party, but in the efficacy of the institutions themselves. They stop believing that the ship can be steered at all.
And you see this in Germany today.
I think you see it everywhere. You look at the GermanPolicy.com report, and it lists these enormous, almost existential macro challenges facing the country. Demographic collapse, a stagnating industrial base, the energy transition, geopolitical instability.
Things the average person feels in their gut, a sense of anxiety.
A deep sense of anxiety. And they look to the state, that organ of social thought, to process this anxiety into action. They are begging for the captain to give a course.
And the state hands him a pebble.
Exactly. And that profound mismatch between the sheer scale of the threat everyone feels and the smallness, the emptiness of the official response, that creates a vacuum.
A vacuum of meaning, of direction.
Right. The state is supposed to be, to use a phrase from Bourdieu, the central bank of symbolic credit. When it fails to act on the big issues because the federal trap prevents it, it effectively declares symbolic bankruptcy.
And what does that feel like for the average citizen?
I think it creates a very specific kind of alienation. The public feels that the state is everywhere in their private lives, regulating their new boiler, checking their tax forms, telling them what kind of light bulbs to buy.
So it's present in the bureaucracy.
Omnipresent.
Yeah.
But it is completely absent in their future. It has no strategic vision. It offers no plan.
Wow. That distinction is fascinating. Present in bureaucracy, absent in strategy. That really explains why people can be so angry and disillusioned, even if their day-to-day life is, relatively comfortable.
It's not about today, it's about tomorrow.
It's the feeling of drifting slowly and comfortably toward a giant waterfall, while the captain and the officers are all busy filling out paperwork in triplicate.
And that feeling leads us directly to the people standing on the bridge of that ship. The political leaders themselves. We have to talk about the managerial class.
The people the system produces.
The kinds of people this system selects for and promotes. You mentioned Olaf Scholz and Friedrich Merz in the intro. Why do they and so many others all seem so similar in their approach, so cautious?
Coalition compatible. That was the phrase from the story that stuck with me.
In a system where any decisive action is systematically punished by the veto players in the Bundesrat, how do you get ahead? How do you rise to the top?
You don't get promoted for being bold, for having a vision.
A vision is a liability. You get promoted for being safe, for being predictable, for being an expert at navigating the committee structure, not at solving the country's problems.
It's a process of negative selection.
The SGI report talks about the shift in political culture away from policy seeking, which is actually trying to solve problems, to vote seeking, which is just trying to stay in office. But I think it goes even deeper than that.
So,
think about the career path of a typical German politician who makes it to the top. You start out in the party's youth organization, the Young Union for the Conservatives or the Jusos for the Social Democrats. You spend 20, maybe 30 years sitting in committees.
learning the rules.
You learn the rules. And what you learn is that the most effective way to kill a rival's idea isn't to have a better idea and debate them. It's to trap them in a procedural error. You learn that a bold proposal is a weakness because it might upset a potential coalition partner you'll need 3 years from now in some state election.
So by the time you actually reach the chancellery, any spark of originality or daring you might have had has been systematically extinguished.
It's been conditioned out of you. You've trained yourself to be a pebble because pebbles don't make waves. It's what the sociologist Norbert Elias called the royal mechanism, which Heaney references in his work.
The royal mechanism.
Think of the court of a king. You have all these competing factions, the left wing of the party, the right wing, the business lobby, the unions, the environmental groups. They're all constantly jockeying for position and they all block each other.
So no single faction can become too powerful.
Right. And who is the only person who can rise to the top in that environment? It's not the strongest or the smartest. It's the one who threatens none of them. The one with the least distinct profile, the most neutral figure.
The lowest common denominator in human form.
It sounds incredibly harsh, but look at the result. The ultimate expression of this was the Grand Coalition, the GroKo, where the two biggest parties, the CDU and SPD, governed together.
For years and years.
Yes. On paper, they have a massive majority in parliament. They could do anything they wanted. They could pass any reform, But what happens in practice?
They do almost nothing.
Because they have to balance so many competing internal interests. The SGI report points out that they just get completely bogged down in these endless coalition compatibility checks on every single issue.
And this brings us back to that feeling of betrayal.
Yeah.
Because the voters, they aren't stupid. They see this managerial class, these politicians who are experts at process but seem to have no vision, and they feel what exactly?
They feel betrayed. They feel like the entire system is a game being played for the benefit of the players, not for the country. And this is where we have to talk about the debt break, the Schuldenbremse.
Okay.
Because this is a crucial piece of the puzzle, and the analysis from the WZB Institute is really illuminating here. To the average person, a debt break sounds like a great idea. It's small.
Don't spend more than you earn. It's the common sense logic of the Swabian housewife, as the cliche goes.
Exactly. So how can fiscal responsibility possibly be a betrayal?
That's what I'm asking.
Because a state is not a housewife. A household can't invest in its own future by taking on debt, but a state absolutely must. And the WZB argues that the debt break, which is written into the German constitution, has become the ultimate tool of self-preservation for this managerial class.
So it's a rigid rule, isn't it? It limits new borrowing to just 0.35% of GDP.
It ties their hands.
So
it ties their hands conveniently. If you are a risk-averse political manager whose primary goal is to avoid difficult decisions, the debt break is your best friend.
I see. So when people demand action, when GermanPolicy.com says the economy is contracting and desperately needs active and decisive policy reinforcement.
Meaning it needs money. Money for crumbling bridges, for a slow rail network, for a disastrously behind digital infrastructure.
The politician can just shrug their shoulders and point to the Constitution. I'd love to fix the trains for you, but the rule says no. Nothing I can do.
It's the perfect out. It replaces difficult political judgment with a simple calculator. It allows them to avoid the fundamental conflict of politics, which is deciding who gets what. Instead of having that messy fight, they can just say, sorry, there's no money for anyone.
But there's a cost to that. A huge cost.
Catastrophic cost. The WZB points this out very clearly. The infrastructure crumbles. The schools fall further behind. The economy stagnates and loses competitiveness. And the voter on the street. The voter sees a country that is supposedly one of the richest in the world, but it can't manage to keep its trains running on time.
And when the mainstream centrist parties all say, we'd love to fix it, but we can't because of the rules, the voter starts looking for someone who doesn't give a damn about the rules.
That is the direct, unassailable line from the Schuldenbremse to the rise of the AfD and the far right. The WZB analysis is terrifyingly clear on this point. They talk about the Brandmauer, the firewall that mainstream parties have tried to build against the far right.
And it's failing.
It's crumbling. Because the center has hollowed itself out with these self-imposed constraints. If the mainstream parties are only offering constraints and pebbles and we can't, and the far right is offering action and disruption and we will, then eventually people who feel desperate will choose disruption.
So the managerial class, in its obsession with the rules of the game and its own safety, is actually destroying the game board itself.
They're losing the audience. They are so focused on process that they've forgotten about results.
It's a system that is actively eating itself. The constitutional structure from Sharp stops the laws from being passed. The political culture that Elias describes selects for weak managerial leaders. And the financial rules, like the debt break, stop any possibility of investment.
It's a perfect prison.
But there's one more layer to this, isn't there? The outline mentions the post-heroic society. This feels like the deepest, most difficult level of the onion to peel back.
It's because if the debt break is the set of handcuffs the politicians wear, the post-heroic mindset is the sedative that the entire society has taken. And we're drawing here on the work of Rolf von Uslar, and this is where we have to tread very carefully because it challenges some very deep-seated and understandable German values.
The term itself, post-heroic, it implies we used to be heroic, and that didn't go so well.
To put it very, very mildly, after the absolute catastrophe of the Second World War, after the grotesque abuse of words like hero and sacrifice and the nation by the Nazis, German society underwent a fundamental psychological shift.
A complete rejection of those ideas.
A complete rejection. And von Uslar describes this shift as a move from the idea of sacrificium, the Roman concept of a willing, noble sacrifice for a greater cause, to the idea of victima, the state of being a victim.
Okay, that's a bit abstract. How does that play out in the Germany of 2026?
Look at the way we discuss military deployments. Von Uslar points to the zero losses mentality that dominated the mission in Afghanistan. The absolute #1 political priority wasn't necessarily the strategic success of the mission.
It was making sure no German soldiers died.
Exactly. Because if a German soldier dies, the German public and media don't see a hero laying down their life for the state's objectives. They see a victim of a policy failure. It's framed as a workplace accident.
The conversation immediately becomes about equipment. Why wasn't the vehicle armored better? Or why was he sent there? It's never, was the mission, was the sacrifice worth it?
The question of whether the hill was worth taking is almost never asked. And while that impulse is deeply understandable given German history, von Uslar argues it creates a fundamental loss of fighting power, of Kampfmoral. But now, let's apply that same post-heroic mindset to domestic politics.
Yeah.
Real structural reform requires sacrifice. Not of life, obviously, but of comfort, of subsidies, of established ways of doing things.
It's the political equivalent of blood, sweat, and tears.
And modern Germany wants the success without the sweat or the tears. You see GermanPolicy.com calling for cold-blooded reforms to the labor market, to the pension system, to Social Security, in order to save the economy for the next generation.
But a post-heroic society sees any loss of comfort not as a necessary sacrifice, but as an intolerable victimization.
If you cut someone's pension benefits to make the system solvent, you aren't reforming the state. No, you are victimizing the elderly. If you build a wind turbine that makes noise, you are victimizing the neighbors. Everyone is a victim and no one is a citizen with duties.
So the politician, who we've already established as a risk-averse manager, looks out at this society, at this electorate, and says, there is absolutely no way I can ask these people to do anything hard.
And this connects perfectly to Heaney's concept of the therapeutic state. This is the final piece of the sociological puzzle. The government stops trying to be a leader and instead starts acting like a therapist.
Its job isn't to fix problems, but to manage feelings.
Its primary goal becomes emotional governance. We see this everywhere in the bureaucracy, in the language of politics, this obsession with safety, with well-being, with inclusion.
This is the woke sensibility that's mentioned in the source material.
In this specific context, it's not really about the culture war issues like pronouns or statues. It's about something much deeper, a structural, systemic aversion to conflict. Heaney talks about the dominance of bourgeois moral and emotional codes. In Berlin today, the dominant code is Harmoniebedürfnis, the desperate need for harmony.
Everyone has to feel good. Everyone has to feel safe.
The state starts to treat the citizen not as a rational actor, but as a fragile patient who must be kept calm and comfortable at all costs.
It takes us right back to the speechwriter in the cafe. His core instruction became to ensure that absolutely no one could be offended.
That is the therapeutic state in action. A cold-blooded reform, like slashing subsidies to an inefficient industry, would hurt people's feelings. It would cause anxiety and conflict. So the therapeutic state avoids it at all costs. It prioritizes emotional literacy over hard power.
It would rather preside over a gentle, comfortable, slow decline than risk a sharp, painful turnaround that might actually work.
It's palliative care for an entire economy.
That is a brutal metaphor, but it feels accurate.
It's because the post-heroic society, combined with this therapeutic state, creates a culture where the Katechan is afraid to use its power.
What?
The Katechan. It's a theological and political term von Uslar uses. It means the one who restrains, the restraining power. A functioning state must be willing to be the Katechan, to restrain chaos, to impose order, which sometimes means using force or inflicting hardship for a greater good.
The modern German state refuses this role.
It abdicates it completely. It refuses to be the bad guy. It refuses to be dangerous either to its enemies abroad or to vested interests at home.
But the world is dangerous. The economic challenges are real. That's the fundamental disconnect. We have created a therapeutic state to manage our internal feelings, but it's facing a world of wolves.
And that is the synthesis of this entire deep dive. That is the empty center. You put all the pieces together. We have built a constitutional machine, the joint decision trap, that automatically filters out bold ideas. We have an incentive structure in our politics that selects for managers who are psychologically incapable of taking risks.
Then we have a financial rule, the debt brake, that prevents us from buying the tools we need to fix the country.
And underneath it all, like a bedrock, we have a post-heroic, therapeutic psychology that views any hardship not as a necessary price for success, but as a failure of the system to keep us comfortable.
It's a perfect storm of paralysis. It's not one thing, it's everything working together.
It is a self-reinforcing loop. You see the SGI report calling Germany a laggard in Europe. You see the WZB Institute arguing that our internal paralysis and our obsession with the debt brake is actively threatening the entire Eurozone.
We're the biggest economy on the continent, but we're acting like a brake on everyone else.
We are the economic engine, but the engine is seizing up because we are too afraid to perform the painful maintenance. The tragedy is that the perfect brakes we built after 1945 to prevent the misuse of power are now preventing the use of power to save the system itself.
They work too well.
We set out to create a state that would never again be a monster, and we succeeded. We created a pebble, smooth, safe, inoffensive, harmless. But you cannot build a future on a foundation of pebbles.
So we have to return to that final image from the opening, the image of the driver.
The driver is Olaf Scholz or Friedrich Merz or whoever comes next. It almost doesn't matter who the person is. They are sitting in the driver's seat of this incredibly powerful car, but the steering wheel is disconnected from the wheels by the federal veto.
The gas pedal is locked up by the debt brake.
And all the passengers in the back are screaming that any sudden movement, any turn, any bump in the road is an act of victimization.
So the driver just sits there, staring at the dashboard, issuing press releases about the importance of clarity and delivery.
While the car rolls slowly, quietly, and comfortably towards the edge of the cliff.
It's not that they don't see the cliff, it's that the entire machine, from the Constitution down to the culture, is designed to prevent them from turning the wheel.
And perhaps, after so many years in the system, they've forgotten how to even try.
That is the reality of the Berlin Republic today. Not a lack of ideas, not a lack of good people, but a systemic, structural inability to turn any idea into action.
The only question left is whether the reality of the cliff will force us to finally break the machine, or if the machine's inertia will simply drive us straight over it.